didn't make any sense. It seemed like God was contradicting himself. He had said one thing just a few verses before, but was now saying an entirely different thing. Eventually, the leaders revealed the right answer. God was testing our faith by being confusing on purpose. Yeah, I had my doubts about that interpretation. So I explored further by visiting the religion section of the university library. By this time, I had already read lots of secondary literature, commentaries of works of Christian mystics, philosophers, apologists. But this time, I had a very specific mission. I wanted to find out what a particular verse in Habakkuk meant. And for the first time, I stumbled into historic biblical criticism, scholarly discussion about what the original text of the Bible actually was. It turned out that quite a few of the words in the oldest or most authoritative Hebrew sources of Habakkuk were, as they say, corrupted. They were illegible due to copying errors or even the physical disintegration of the source manuscripts. Moreover, there are scholarly arguments about all kinds of things, like the correct order of the verses, or which verses were truly part of the original text and which were just marginalia that somehow got inserted later. It dawned on me that maybe some parts of Habakkuk were confusing, not because God was trying to test our faith, but because the original coherence of the text had been lost. I was intrigued, and I wanted to learn more. As it turns out, Gary and I were just about to leave on a trip to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when we were there, I insisted we seek out a good bookstore. And I had success. We came back to our hotel room with this book here, Rescuing the Bible. Here you go. Rescuing the Bible from Fundamentalism by John Shelby Spong, an Episcopal bishop. Then we did something we have never done before. We both read not just the same book, but the same copy of the same book at the same time in one sitting. What a page turner it was. It was extremely interesting to learn, for example, that the four Gospels, the books that present the core of the Christian message, were only written 1 to 2 generations after the events they purport to relate. And they were almost certainly not eyewitness accounts. Moreover, if the Gospels are studied in the historic order of their composition, instead of the order in which they appear in the New Testament, one can actually see the myth of Jesus as God being constructed. Well, when I finished the book a few hours later, I no longer had any reason to believe that Jesus had been resurrected in the body, that he was the Son of God, that the Bible was divinely inspired, that there was a hell or a heaven or any kind of afterlife at all. I no longer had any reason to believe that there was a God, whether this be the traditional God of the theologians or even some vague force of love unifying the cosmos. In 3 hours, I had gone from sincere yet struggling believer to convinced atheist. In the popular imagination, losing one's faith is portrayed as a moment of darkness, confusion, existential loneliness, and deep grief. But for me, it was entirely the opposite. It was one of the most euphoric, liberating moments of my life. Suddenly, after years of confusion, I had clarity. I had truly believable answers to many of the questions I had struggled with. For one, I had a good explanation for why I could never discern God's voice in prayer. I also had a good answer to the question of why bad things happen to good people. There is no benevolent, omnipotent God looking out for us, so it is only to be expected that things will not always work out well for us, no matter how good we are or what we do. Most obviously, the forces of nature do not care about us. Even the cells in our body do not care about us. Of course, we have the bonds of love with some people in our lives, and we can work to expand the bonds of love, the circle of love and understanding. But we are only human, And there will always be those trying to live their own version of the good in a way that conflicts with ours. Sometimes these conflicts will be reconcilable, and sometimes they won't be. Again, this new perspective might sound bleak, but I found it extremely liberating. Without God in the picture, I was free. I was free to live the way I wanted to live. I could think the thoughts I wanted to think. I was free to have my own goals and plans. I was free from worries about hell or fear of missing out on heaven. I was also free to come up with my own idea of the good. Instead of only praying and reading Christian literature, I could listen to my moral instincts. I could also seek wisdom wherever it might be found, not just in religious texts, but in philosophy, in literature, in a friend's advice, or even in a stranger's words. That moment of exhilarating, joyous deconversion is one I will never forget. It's not just I suddenly felt free and centered on the right path. It was as if I had undergone a huge shift in consciousness. I remember looking at my husband in total wonder. And everything seemed more, I remember looking at my husband, not with wonder, looking at my husband with tears of joy, there we go, tears of joy, and looking around the hotel room in total wonder. Everything seemed more solid, more colorful, more vibrant, and more real. I still remember the exact layout of that one hotel room, and the color and the pattern of the bedspread, all kinds of details. Everything that was beautiful or moving or useful or intriguing was that way suddenly, in and of itself, and not as a secondary reflection of God's goodness. Most importantly, this moment was a huge pivotal point in my life. It was a moment I finally grew up. It was not when I turned 18 or 21 or graduated from college or got my first real job or even when I got married that I became an adult. Instead, it was when I realized that the world we live in is the real world, the world that counts, and that I was free to live life and be good in my own way.
Hello, everybody. Okay, I'm trying to get everything together here. Get all my accoutrements here, and plus put on my glasses. This will be interesting. Did it? Okay, so I was 18. It was my first year of college at Oklahoma City University, and I wanted to be an actor, to strut and fret my hour upon the stage. I was in the theater department, and although I was excited to be there, I was, of course, apprehensive. I took several classes that were required. However, my real love was to be able to do plays. A few years before that, I had originally thought of being a chiropractor and actually anticipated going in that direction. When, as a junior in high school, I was in the play Good Morning, Miss Dove, where I played a nice part of a doctor, and I heard the applause, and that, as they say, was that. So, I was in my first real acting class, and I had a professor named Miss Mary Anna Davenport. She called everyone Schnookums. Our first assignment was to bring a memorized monologue to present for the class. I had just watched in the summer on television the film Beckett, starring Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton, and I was moved by the film and its subject matter and its beauty and its tremendous acting by the two stars. It was based on the original play by Jean Anouilh, with translation by Lucien Hill and a screenplay by Edward Arnault. After seeing it, I went out and bought the Anouilh play, and I read it over and over and over. I decided I would do Beckett's monologue and set out to memorize it. To be frank, I've always had a bit of trouble with memorization. There are some actors who I know can look at a script or a monologue and be able to say it verbatim in a short amount of time. Anyway, I worked on it and was pretty sure I had it down pat. That day, when I was about to do the monologue, we held our class in a small theater with a thrust stage to work on. Oh, I was so excited about being on that stage. Miss Davenport said, "Are you ready, Schnookums?" And I said I was ready. And I stepped on that stage. I was nervous, but I got on my knees to do the monologue. It would be simple enough. Too simple, perhaps. Saintliness is a temptation, too. Oh, how difficult it is to get you to understand me, my Lord. I was slow in praying to you, but I cannot believe that others worthier than me could understand you better than I. I am but a beginner, and I must make mistake after mistake, as I did as a young boy when I did my Latin translations, and my riotous imagination made the old priest roar with laughter. But I cannot believe that your language is like any human tongue, with a set of idioms and a dictionary and grammar. But to a sinner who at 14, who at 14, I couldn't go on. I felt the sweat forming on my brow. I thought 1,000 thoughts, but none of them were about that monologue. Miss Davenport then did not call me Schnookums anymore. In fact, she rather wrote me off that day. She did cast me from time to time in some plays and that she directed, but I was never one of her favorites. And here I am, 53 years later. And I've had what I would call a wonderful success as an actor, although I've not been in a Broadway play or garnered any type of movie star status. But I have worked in my craft for more times than I can count. I have done 5 one-person plays that I memorized with great detail. I played a wonderful clown, Ronald McDonald, for 27 years. I did improv with the Disney Institute, where I was managing instructor of show business. And I have loved every moment of it. I think back to the first time I stepped on that OCU stage to do that monologue, and I know that my passage has been filled with joys and sorrows, with rejections, but joys of being an actor. I even went so far as to write and produce my own plays. This Christmas will be my 24th year of my one-man Christmas Carol. And my daughter Chloe, who many of you know, will be directing it for the first time. I'll be performing my play, The End of the Road, An Evening with Jack Kerouac, in January, that I wrote with my friend Steve Rowell. And I have performed the other 3 one-person shows at the Orlando Shakespeare Play Festival and many theaters, resident communities, and some even outdoors. And quite frankly, I'm not finished. I am what I call semi-retired. But I have been really busier than I was in my 40s and 50s. I love my life, and I feel that I have contributed to society by my acting, my playwriting, my directing, and my producing. And I think of Miss Davenport from time to time, and when I do, I say, "Well, Schnookums, I did it, and I'm still doing it." Thanks.
Hi, I'm Roberta Lerman.